He had the mind of an 8-year-old, a devotee of Kali. After all these lifetimes of wooing, she doesn't respond. Go and find who is the dumbest idiot in our kingdom. Find that guy, I want him to marry my daughter. But the girl took it out on him, every day, every moment insulting him in 1,000 different ways. So he went into the Kali temple, he just started banging his head at her feet and his head started bleeding. He heard a voice from outside and it said, he opened the door. So what is the significance of this worship of the feminine? There are fantastic examples. His name was Kalidasa, that means a slave of Kali, a devotee of Kali. You know, stories get little extra frills on the way, but the important thing is what it's trying to say. Not the factuality of the story, but the spirit of the story. So for many lifetimes, Kalidasa was a great devotee of Kali. So in his previous lifetime, he was deeply disappointed that in spite of all his devotion, she did not appear. She did nothing for him. So he died little disappointed with her. After all these lifetimes of wooing, she doesn't respond. So in his present life, where his name was something else, we don't know what his name was, he was born as a little bit of a simpleton. When he was a grown man, he had the mind of an 8-year-old. So generally, when you're 8 years, for who you are, people think you're cute. When you become 18 and still remain the same way, they say you're a bloody fool. Hello? Yes or no? So this happened to him, everybody thought he's the village fool. And the king of the local king who was there, he had a daughter who considered herself very intelligent. Maybe she was. And she wanted to marry an intelligent man. And ladies, you know it's hard to find one. Because if he was that smart, why would he marry you? See, a joke is a double-edged sword, okay? So whoever came to marry her, from many kingdoms, because she can only marry a prince, many of them came and she rejected all of them as fools. He said, they're not fit for me. After not only rejecting these suitors, also insulting them as fools, slowly many kings around this small kingdom became the enemies of this kingdom because they were not only refused, they were called fools by this girl. So the father, facing political and military pressure from all around, he got so mad with the girl and he said, you idiot, the thing is, I must get you married to the worst fool in our kingdom. Only then you will learn your lesson. So he scolded her nicely and told his men to go and find who is the dumbest idiot in our kingdom. Find that guy, I want him to marry my daughter. So they went looking here and there. Then they saw in this village, a young man was sitting on the wrong side of the branch and was cutting the branch. Like how we as a generation of people are doing ecologically. You know, we belong to that category, all of us. They saw, this can't be any more stupid than this. He's cutting the branch on which he's sitting, and when he succeeds, he will fail. Right now, that's where we as a generation are. When we succeed, we will fall. Our idea of success is right now so destructive. So anyway, they caught this guy and took him and said, there can't be a worse fool than this. So he is fit to marry the princess. They got them married forcefully. But the girl took it out on him, every day, every moment insulting him in 1,000 different ways, reviling him in many ways possible. After a few months, even this guy who was very simple-minded, even he felt very insulted because she had a sharp tongue. So one day he left the palace and went away into the forest just to escape the sharpness of her tongue. Then there was an old Kali temple in the forest. Usually Kali temples are deep in the jungles because the rituals are of a certain kind which society may not be willing to swallow. The normal society may not be able to digest the type of rituals that happen in the Kali temples many times. So, always deep in the jungles. So he went into the Kali temple. You know, to escape one woman, he has to go to another. He went and put his head at her feet and started banging his head, not knowing any prayer or mantra or chant or anything. He just started banging his head at her feet, and his head started bleeding as drops of blood fell on her feet. He had locked himself because he was afraid soldiers will come, find him and again take him back to his wife. Then he heard a voice from outside and it said, "I'm Kali, I've come, open the door." By now he was so furious that for these lifetimes you did not come. He remembered everything suddenly. He said, "For these lifetimes I prayed, I chanted, I worshipped, you did not come. Now what the hell have you come? I'm not going to open the door." Then Kali repeatedly called him, "Please open the door." Then just to taunt her, because he's still an 8-year-old boy, he opened the door a crack and put his tongue out toward her. And she struck his tongue. And one who was considered the kingdom's most profound fool suddenly becomes a great scholar who… This is something that's attributed to Kalidasa. Kalidasa is considered in India as, in terms of literature and poetry, greater than Shakespeare. They compare… comparative studies of Kalidasa and Shakespeare exists in India, and many scholars rate him as way above in his language, in his mastery of language, in his understanding and how he expressed himself. Very little of his work is left, unfortunately, but in spite of that, that little work is of phenomenal quality. So suddenly he started composing poetry and literature. Just like that, he could sit in a place and simply recite poetry, not written, simply like that. So his tongue became of such exuberance of quality that he could just recite new verses just like that. This has happened to many people, I must tell you this. There have been significant men in the world, I don't want to name them now because it is politically sensitive. Significant men, just look up history, in the last 2 centuries, who were nurtured by their mothers and in some way, in their perception, the mother remained like a goddess. She did not come down to become a loving mother. She remained a goddess being hard on the child. Many men are there in the world in the last 2 centuries who have risen to great heights in whatever they were doing because in some way they were in feminine worship. One important thing that you need to understand is, feminine is not a gender, it is a dimension. The significance of this dimension is, it's easier to get response from this dimension than the other dimension that we consider as masculine, because it is designed in a different way. It's not about which is better than which, there's no such thing. It's just different. All of you have heard of him, a mathematician. There was also a movie about him a few years ago, of how Ramanujam poured out mathematics, very complex mathematical formulae, to a point where in early 20th century, when there was no concept of black holes, he kind of created mathematics describing black holes. Always in scientific process or scientific research, first is a theory, a conceptualization of what it could be, and then trying to prove it with either empirical proof if that is possible, but for other aspects, mathematical proof. But he produced math before there was a concept. Even today, it's being figured out what exactly is all this about. But he just poured out mathematics. When people asked him, where is this coming from? Simply notebooks and notebooks of math he just poured out. Sitting on his deathbed, he died very early, unfortunately. He said, my Devi, my goddess, bleeds mathematics. So, these are little magnified stories, but it is not out of sync with what can happen. One who attains to the grace of the Devi, whatever you're doing in your life, you may be a business person, you may be a professional in something, you may be an artist, a musician, a yogi, whatever you are. If you want to pitch up your activity to another dimension of, doing things, you need Devi's grace. One who's touched by this grace will naturally rise in ways that other people will think is miraculous. If you want to find expression in the world, you need Devi's grace. Whether you do it by chanting a mantra, whether you do it by going to a temple, or whether you do it by acknowledging that dimension within yourself, or whether you do it by looking up to something that is feminine, or simply by being in nature. It doesn't matter how you do it, but that dimension that we refer to as feminine, when it yields to you, your articulation or your expression in the world will find tremendous enhancement. This is why we are opening this up for men also, the Bhairavi sadhana.